Hey, it's Emily. Figured I would do a video about some of the resources, I guess, that I have been using lately to continue learning both about like UX and just design in general and kind of just some thought pieces, I guess. I've gotten some comments in the past of people wanting me to post about just different resources that I use to continue kind of like growing my UX knowledge, and figured that I would do a little video and share. So I figured we can kind of start with, I don't know, I guess some of my favorite ones, and then maybe some that I've been thinking about, and then just general resources. Here I just have like a laptop of essentially of all my resources, and like if I read a cool article or a book or podcast or whatever, then I try to put it in here so I can either go reference it again, or if I don't have time to read it at that point or look at it, then I, have a place to put it for later. So highly recommend kind of like getting a little bank, I guess, of all of your stuff that you either have read or listened to or like, and then you can kind of, share out when needed. So, but the first one is called, it's an academic journal actually, and it's pretty old. I want to say it was like in 1985 is when it came out or something, but it's called On the Folly of Rewarding for A While Hoping for B, and it's by Stephen Kerr. I'll like see if I can try to find a screenshot or something put up here, but it's literally, you can just Google it and a PDF will come up to look at it. But it's basically all about like a discussion on how to incentivize people's actions and different situations in which what you want people to do and what's actually being incentivized do not match up at all, and kind of how that impacts how people act. Because for the most part, people will do what they're incentivized to do, whether that's like monetarily or, makes you feel good or whatever. It's just an interesting thing to consider, especially when you are, designing something that you want someone to like go through the certain workflow or do a certain thing. Like you need to be making sure that you are also incentivizing them appropriately, and just, something fun to consider. Okay, next one is basically it's just a compilation of his books, but Edward Tufte, I never know how to pronounce his name, but he has come out with a lot of, he's like the grandfather of visual, like data visualization design essentially. And so he has a couple different ones. There's one that's like, I think it's called Visual Explanations. There's like a whole like series essentially that he's done, and really recommend those, especially if you are really interested in data visualization. Super interesting, just going through basically how to appropriately design data visualizations, what to consider, what it means, like basically depending on how you display something, it could have a very different meaning, whether that's like the axes and the scales that you're using or how you're displaying that information, where you're getting that, like all of that will end up impacting how people will ingest that data and like what conclusions they come to basically. So that's another interesting one that I really enjoyed reading. It is a little slow sometimes, but I'd overall recommend. And then two other ones are actually podcasts that I have found that they have some pretty good episodes, and I don't listen to them all. It's mostly just like when one particularly that the title looks interesting or whatever, I'll check out, but it's called Design Better, and that's actually by Envision. And then The Crazy One, which is by Stephen Gates. They both talk about more design related things. It tends to be sometimes a bit more of a conversational, and just like, okay, this is what I've been exploring recently, and it's kind of interesting, just some more like food for thought, or while you're on a walk or something, you can put them on, and I found them to be pretty interesting. There's also two articles in like a blog that I recently was told about. So one of my coworkers is really into following, UX design blogs and websites and all this kind of stuff. So he's like super kind and shares it out to the team, just so we kind of have a bunch of different resources so we can continue to learn. He recently shared the blog, The Sepist. This person does a bunch of different blog articles, And there are two ones that were really interesting. One is called A GPS for the Mind, and the other one is Knowledge Tools, Finite and Infinite. And it basically just discusses like how people move through ideas. And basically when you're designing something, a lot of times you will have a lot of different ways to either search for data, display data, different like types of canvases essentially that you're working on. And both of those articles are super interesting and kind of mind-boggling to like really understand like this pathfinding idea. So it's like pathfinding in a maze of ideas is something that is like used in the article. I wish I came up with that, but honestly it's not quite. But one of the things that I really enjoyed about it, or the quotes that I thought was really interesting, is a good tool for thinking should make the combined human and tool system more effective at hunting for novel explanations within our idea mazes. Just let that sink in. I don't know, I like read it and I was like, yes, exactly. And also a lot of my work right now does involve looking through a lot of different data and organizing it, and how do you like search through that data? How do you come to conclusions about different data sets, etc.? Like how do we piece that all together? So that was just super interesting of like, yeah, how do we take all of this data and kind of be able to sort it out, or let the user sort it out for themselves? And then that kind of leads into the second article, the Knowledge Tools, Finite and Infinite, and it's basically talking about like different tools that you can use to kind of create that pathway through the maze of like ideas and data and like that kind of stuff. So it kind of talks about like, okay, your average note-taking app is finite. So basically if you have a bunch of notes, then you know how many notes you have, like say you have 1,000, whatever. Similar, like I think of it, okay, as like Excel, where you have this data and you know what the data is and like how to navigate through it, and you've organized it, like all of this kind of stuff. But then on the other side is like Google, where basically there's an almost infinite amount of data that you are able to either search through, but like how do you search through that, you know? And then it's just like you end up more exploring a space rather than organizing the space. I feel like that's a very bad like term, but I highly recommend the article because it's super interesting. And it's just talking about like, okay, like this map making idea of how do you kind of merge these two together to design tools to help you better access all of the information and navigate through all that information in those infinite spaces, while kind of leveraging the tool of like a finite knowledge-based tool to kind of do that. Like, is there a way to marry both of those? So I don't know. Anyway, highly recommend checking out the blog. There's a ton of different like cool blog articles and stuff about it. A final little like bonus article, I guess, that I found was kind of interesting, especially if you're getting more into UX and like visual design, light mode, dark mode stuff. There's an article by Figma actually called Illuminating Dark Mode, and that's basically just like a discussion about the process that they went through to enable Figma to have a dark mode option. And especially if you're getting more into it, it's just really is very good about talking through all of the different considerations, the collaboration that was required, all the different areas of the platform within Figma that they needed to consider, and then basically how do you transition a design system to only be handling light mode essentially, or like one mode, and then okay, how do you transition it to then be able to toggle between the modes based on the user's preference and stuff like that. So I feel like that gets us a little like mini shout out of, I thought it was really interesting, but it's nothing like crazy. Anyway, that kind of wraps up. I don't know, I feel like I might just do a weekly one of these starting soon, because it's super interesting to just like have a little rundown and talk about it with you guys on the internet, and hope you learn something from it. So that's all I have for now, but if you enjoyed this, please give it a big thumbs up. Really supports my channel. Like, subscribe, whatever, you know, what kids do these days. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.